welcome you here this morning for this meeting as we prepare for hurricane season, which begins on June 1st, which is Monday. And particularly as we prepare for hurricane season, we are also in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have been preparing all year long for hurricane season, and now with COVID intervening, we've got special precautions that we're making for the upcoming season. Here with me this morning is Director of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness for the Parish of St. Tammany, Clarence Poe, and he'll be speaking in a few minutes as well. I want to welcome the media. I want to welcome members of the Parish Council, Martha Casabon and Jimmy Davis, representing their respective districts, and members of my staff that are here as well, that help make this event possible. I want to thank Clarence and his team for getting us to this point where we are in full preparation for hurricane season and along with COVID ID preparations. And let's talk about the preparedness that we're going through. I want to let you know that St. Tammany is ready. We have been preparing all year, as we do each and every year, for this particular season. And with the new factor involved, COVID-19, it makes it particularly interesting in how we're preparing. And I will let Clarence get a little bit more into the detail. But one thing we want to particularly invest in our citizens is that we want our citizens to enhance their plan. And what that means is, in addition to batteries and flashlights and all other things that you would prepare for a hurricane, you've got to enhance the plan and include hand sanitizer, gloves, masks, and all other precautions that we are dealing with, that we will need as we deal with COVID-19. And if we do experience a Cat 3, Cat 4, Cat 5 major hurricane and evacuations are called, we want our citizens to be prepared not to go to local shelters, because there are going to be extra precautions needed in our local shelters, but to be prepared to go out of the risk area. And we ask our citizens to do so in advance. We know that all of our families have plans for hurricanes, but now particularly additional plans have to be made to enhance the experience. We're prepared. Again, we ask our citizens to be prepared. We ask that our citizens, if they have not already done so, to sign up for Alert St. Tammany, and that can be done at our website, www.stpgov.org. And this allows you to get notices of important evacuation and other alerts that St. Tammany Parish may send out during an event. I want to thank our partner agencies that include law enforcement, fire, utilities, schools, EMS, faith-based communities, our municipalities, all who are involved in being able to communicate during an event on behalf of our citizens. We are one cohesive team, and working together, we are critical to the safety of our residents during an event. So again, thank you for being here. I'm going to ask Clarence Poe to come to the podium and give us an update. Clarence?
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, we're facing another hurricane season, and NOAA's prediction is already out. Right now, we're looking at anywhere from 13 to 16 named storms this year, and probably 6 to 10 that can become hurricanes. But we don't want to get wrapped around predictions because a lot of times they change, and we know that it only takes one to cause problems here when we start talking about hurricanes. Okay, this season has been real challenging when you start talking about preparedness when we're responding to the COVID virus. Okay, number of different things going on there. A lot of prepping has taken place. Our EOC liaisons, as a matter of fact, they're on the other side of the building right now. They're going through EOC liaison training because we know that, guess what, with the virus, we probably don't want to activate the EOC and have 50 bodies sitting in the EOC with the COVID virus going on. Okay, so we've put some things in place, those measures to actually activate a virtual EOC, meaning that we probably have minimum people here in the EOC still exercising the social distancing that we have to do, and have all those other liaisons virtually connected to the EOC. So they're ready for that. We're completely ready to exercise those functions that's needed. Just want to talk about what the parish president just talked about, enhancing your plan, okay? Make sure that you enhance your plan, a lot of different things, okay? Add to those things, the hand sanitizer, the hand rub, okay? All those different things, the gloves, the masks. But one of the most important things is to ensure you have somewhere to evacuate to, okay? That's the number one thing, is making sure that we can get out of the risk area when evacuation is called. I know that's going to be challenging for most people, because usually what we do, we open up shelters and we keep everybody here in the parish. And I know that with coronavirus, you contact somebody and they really don't want you to come to their house. Just one of those things, okay? But look, contact somebody completely out of the risk area, coordinate with them, okay? Have them, and then when you get to those areas, make sure you're still exercising social distances to keep everybody happy. Okay, and then if the storm passes, then we can all come back and we're still, go on with our lives. But want to make sure that you enhance those plans, make sure you have that evacuation plan ready to go for this season. It is going to be another active season. Okay, so we just want to make sure that we're prepared for that. The EOC, once again, is ready. Like I say, on the other side of the building, the EOC liaisons is actually going through EOC training right now. We broke it up into two sections, one this morning from 9 to 11:30, and then the next one will take place from 1 to 3:30. And that gives us a chance to continue to exercise the social distancing inside the EOC and continue to keep everybody happy. So we're responding to this event, and we may be responding to two events at the same time. It's nothing that we haven't done before. We've done it a number of times. We even did it a couple of weeks ago when we had flooding on the west side of the parish. We still were responding to the COVID virus, but we still had to respond to the flooding that was going on in those areas, okay? We'll make sure that we stay vigilant and alert. We want you to do the same thing. Stay alert to what's going on around you and the information that's being put out, okay? So with that said, we talked about shelters. We're going to try our best not to open shelters, okay? Because we don't want to put people in there and have people congregated on one another, exposing themselves to the hazards, okay? So how do we do that when we call for an evacuation and you can't find anywhere to go, you can't find any relatives that will put you up for a while? Then think about those other things. Get creative with those different things, okay? Non-congregated sheltering, meaning that those hotels, motels outside of the risk area. See if you can make contact with them to find somewhere to go, okay? So we're going to make sure we're going to keep ourselves healthy. We're going to stay alert, and we're asking you to do the same thing. Sign up for that Alert St. Tammany, okay? Make sure that you test that to make sure that you have that continuity between parish government and you that's out there, our citizens. And with that, that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Clarence. And Clarence is prepared, as you see. Clarence served as assistant director for many, many years until he was promoted earlier this year in the director position. And we have full confidence in Clarence and his team for leading us through any type of event that we may have in the future. Thank you for that update, Clarence, and at this point, I'll open up for questions from the media. Yes, sir. Brian?
The shelter issue. Are you saying you're not going to open shelters during that hurricane situation?
No, actually, we say we want to minimize the need for shelters, particularly because of the extra precautions that would be needed with the COVID-19 virus in making sure that we don't invite the element of the coronavirus in our shelters. So we're encouraging citizens to make arrangements and not count on shelters in the event they're needed. And of course, evacuations will only be called as needed, and that will be determined on a case-by-case basis depending on the type of storm that it is. But thank you for that question, Brian.
Mike, do you think that you'll be maybe ordering evacuations a little bit earlier than you normally do because of the COVID-19?
Yes, we had initial meetings, internal meetings, and we discussed that possibility. I don't have the exact numbers, but the invitation of COVID-19 into the emergency preparedness plan has required us to alter everything that we've done in the past to make sure that we're covering for that. So if it was 40 hours in advance, it may be 50 hours in advance now, and I'll ask Clarence to address that if you have the exact answers for that.
Absolutely. A few changes that we made. When it comes to coronavirus control evacuation, we know that if the state calls for a contraflow, then guess what? Contraflow starts at 30 hours. Usually that's typical, okay? So we know contraflow starts right here in St. Tammany Parish. When you come across the twin span, then you won't be able to take I-12. The only place you can go is up 59. You come across the causeway, then you're going to be diverted to 190, once 190 to 12. Once you get on 12 and you hit 55, you're going to be diverted north. So at 30 hours, when it comes to contraflow in the parish, that portion have not changed that much, okay? Over on the South Shore, a lot of different things have changed, especially in their direction for that period, that contraflow. Okay, so we want to ensure that that contraflow mix that comes there, whether it's 50, 60, 50, or 40 hours before contraflow, that's completely exerted out of the parish before our citizens starts to move. Now, if it looks like it's what we encourage our citizens to do, that if it looks like an evacuation, you know that, hey, the South Shore is already moving, then don't wait till the last minute to make that decision to move, to get out of the risk area. Okay, get further inland, get somewhere it's safe, where you're not caught up in the contraflow mix. Okay, so that's what we're asking our citizens to do. The reason that contraflow can't come by 12, because we asked the state police when they was developing the contraflow plan to take under consideration for the citizens here in St. Tammany Parish. We know that everything that happens on the South Shore affects St. Tammany. Okay, especially when you start talking about traveling the highways. So they did take that under consideration, and that's why when you come across that twin span, you have to continue north. Our citizens are trying to do the same thing to evacuate out of the parish also. So we encourage our citizens to try to use those other state highways that's not caught in the contraflow mix for evacuations. Thank you.
Clarence, you kind of indicated you're going to try not to open shelters. Mr. Cooper said we will open shelters. It seems like it's obviously going to be a challenge, for one thing. And how can you minimize shelters if they're needed when you have to do so much social distancing? Wouldn't you need to open extra shelters to allow people to have the space they might need?
Absolutely. That has been a change for us when we started strategizing our shelter operations this year, where typically when we would open, we would use an opening sequence and open one shelter on each side of the parish, and then wait until that shelter is 75% filled before we open another shelter. We have shelters already lined up. We've already coordinated those with the school board if we are forced to open shelters, okay? And that strategy has changed a lot. Instead of opening one shelter on one side of the parish, we may have to open two shelters. And that will give us the ability to exercise social distancing between families, okay, not between individuals. If you've been living together as a family, we will exercise that distances between families when we start talking about shelters. So we do have those shelters ready to go if needed, like we was talking about. We don't want to open shelters. We want to minimize that as much as we can since we're responding to the COVID virus, but we do have those shelters ready to go if needed.
Do you all have to round up volunteers for those shelters, or is that a Red Cross function? And if you do have to round up volunteers, how big of a challenge is that right now?
That's a huge challenge. Those shelters are, depending on which shelters, the general population evacuation shelters are actually staffed and managed by the American Red Cross. We do have special shelters that we do have here in the parish because we want to try our best to keep our citizens right here in the parish and not evacuating them out if we don't have to. So we have those special shelters like your electrically dependent shelters, the pet-friendly shelter. Okay, our employees, we want to make sure we're taking care of our employees. And we also provide a shelter for our nursing home also, to actually try to keep them here also. Now, when it comes to managing those shelters, you're absolutely right. It may take the Red Cross a little bit of time to get here when you start talking about a large event, volunteers from that has to come from all across the country. So we have things in place that if we have to do those, we'll get those registrations into those general population shelters, and then once the Red Cross is there, we'll turn them over to the Red Cross.
And then in terms of the drill that you have going on here right now, you have people working at satellite locations, and would you anticipate that would continue if we were to have a storm and this COVID crisis continues? And how are your lines of communication with those satellite locations, given how fragile those lines often become in a storm?
We are ready to go for those type locations, like I mentioned earlier about the EOC liaisons that won't be in the EOC, but they may be working virtually either from their agency or department, or they may be even working from home, but they can get into the same software that we use for EOC management during an event. Now, we know that one of our #1 problems and lessons learned from Hurricane Katrina was communications. So a lot of different things, the enhancement of the communications infrastructure has taken place throughout the years. But if those things, we can never say never, satellite tower go down or something, we lose that, then we also have RF signal. We have interoperable communications with radios through all of your first responders and a lot of agencies out there. So the EOC is set up to where if we do lose those communications, whether it's through regular landlines, your cell phone, your cell towers, then we'll go to RF signal.
What is your biggest concern as we head into this hurricane season?
Is to, with everything that's going on right now, is just to not be faced with having to put people in shelters like we were just talking about, and not having, I mean, this thing, the shelter, I mean, the COVID response is not over with. It hasn't gone anywhere. The threat and the risk is still there. So my biggest concern right now is keeping everybody healthy, keeping everybody providing that social distances at all costs, or whatever we have to do.
Clarence, what you talked about the flooding a couple weeks ago. Was there any specific lessons you guys learned from that with the dual thing going on?
Not really. I mean, some things you just have to respond to. You know, if you receive anywhere from 14 to 16 inches of rain in a short period of time, then the only thing you could do is just respond to whatever's happening, the event that's happening right there. Ensure that you get your citizens taken care of, whether it's search and rescue efforts, and get them somewhere where it's safe to provide them a shelter for. That was one of the challenges during that event, is the fact that, guess what? Typically, when areas flood out there, we know exactly which shelter we open up and where people will go. Well, we didn't want to open up a shelter, so the next best thing was to find a motel and have it ready to accept those people that had to be rescued or was caught in a situation of flooding.
Is that what y'all did? Did y'all have a motel?
We did have a hotel. I mean, we had a couple of hotels that stepped up and says, okay, yep, I understand exactly what the situation is. If we have somebody that's taken out by the sheriff's office from search or rescue, or if someone has lost their home and they can't get back into it until the next day, we did identify a shelter, and a hotel, and the hotel was receptive to it.
President Cooper,
as things go along, we hit phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Can you talk a little bit about how reduced restrictions will help you guys through the hurricane season? I'm sure hitting phase 2 and phase 3 will certainly change the way you do things.
Well, of course, as we move into less restrictions, but due to COVID, it will allow us to have less restrictions, of course, if shelters are utilized particularly. So we're hoping that we're able to move into the next phase soon, which will ultimately mean that our positive cases are going down and the spread of the coronavirus is being mitigated. So yes, that does work hand in hand. As we stop the spread of the coronavirus, it's going to help us be better prepared for our citizens. And I might mention too that we've got over 250,000 people in St. Tammany Parish, and our number one concern is the health, welfare, and safety of our citizens. We are prepared, but we ask our citizens to prepare on their own, enhance preparedness by providing and securing other precautions as they prepare for the hurricane season. But also, I gave the website stpgov.org, but there are other sources, local media, national media, weather services, that our citizens can stay advised of what's happening in our parish and where to go with regards to possible evacuations or shelters or any other information that they may need. So we are prepared. We thank the local media for what they do in getting our message across to our citizens. So unless there are no other questions, we will adjourn this meeting, and I know many of you had an opportunity to see the Situation Room, and you're invited to go back in and visit that if you wish. So thank you again for being here. Our message is we're prepared, and we want our citizens to be prepared for the upcoming season. Thank you.